Howdy guys. Today we are going to be going through my entire physical TBR, which is every book behind me, and you can't even see all the books because there are stacks that are out of the screen. I recently organized all the books that I have because I'm trying to collect 1,000 books, and I've been putting them in an Excel spreadsheet, tagging them, and making sure that every book has been documented on TikTok and YouTube. So yeah, I went through every single book I own, and these are all the books on my physical TBR, which is further evidence that I should not be book shopping, but I don't think that's gonna stop me. But anyway, I wanted to go through every single book that I haven't read that I physically own. At the top, I have The Friend Zone and Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I am pretty sure there's a book that goes in between this. I think it's pink. My brother got me these for Christmas, and I think he just forgot to buy the second one. I just have never read Abby Jimenez. I know that the hype is real with her. I'm very excited to read her books. I just haven't gotten around to this, so these are the first two. The Spanish Love Deception. Yes, I know that this is like 2020 quarantine core, but I have never read it, and honestly, I'm scared that it's like not gonna live up to the hype. I know that a lot of people say that the guy in this book is like the best book boyfriend. I think his name is Aaron, and I think I'll love it once I do read it. It's just that I'm worried it won't live up to the hype. Every Summer After. If you keep up on TikTok, I actually just gave this book away to my best friend because I am stupid and I bought 2 copies of it. And I've heard that this book is equated to Love in Other Words, which a pro and a con for me, right? Because I did love Love in Other Words up until the very distraught ending. So really hope that the ending isn't the same. But I do hope that everything leading up to it is very similar because I think I will like this book. Stay With Me by Nicole Fiorina? I don't know anything about this book. Apparently this is set in the UK, and this girl who has sociopathic tendencies goes to a troubled private school, meets this guy that she's like obsessed with. I'm pretty sure that I bought this from Barnes & Nobles on a whim. I don't think I had ever heard of it. I just kind of like picked it up on the shelf because I'm intrigued by it. Verity by Colleen Hoover. My best friend and I were just talking about this last night because we were talking about like how Colleen Hoover loves to traumatize her readers. She told me that this book was incredibly messed up. Like psychologically, she said that it really messed with her and it was more so disturbing than scary. Not sure if that makes me want to read it or not want to read it. I didn't actually buy this copy. My aunt read this in her book club and she gave me the book that she does not collect, like a very normal person, and isn't insane like this. The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I really want to read this book because I'm so interested in the movie. Lucy Hale did that movie. I really like her as an actress. I really want to compare the book to the movie. I think I will really like it because I do like when coworkers are like, you know, bantering. Enemies to lovers is too strong, but like dislike to lovers, I think I would like that in an office setting. So I'm really intrigued by this book. 5 Feet Apart. So this book I actually meant to give to my sister, didn't realize she already owned it, so I kept it for myself. I think this is a movie and I've heard that it's kind of tragic. Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I did a video last summer where I wanted to read top like summary books, and this book came up. I cannot believe that Colleen Hoover would write a typical summer romance. It's probably traumatic in some way, but the cover is so pretty, and I just remember this very distinctly. The girl at the cash register did validate my purchase, and I always love when that happens. The Infinity Between Us. Again, this was for the video that I did, which I'll link up above. I just never got around to it. Legends and Lattes. Started it a little bit, but then I was doing a YouTube video, and so I like stopped for a bit. This one I know is like a cozy fantasy. I started the beginning where like one of the main characters was like in battle and they were just fed up with war. They were like, this is it. And then they decided to open a coffee shop. And I think that's such a cool concept. It kind of reminds me in the MCU when like, you know, all those hardcore battles are happening, or when Infinity War happened, like everyone was snapped away and it's like this big cinematic battle. But then you have Spider-Man, you know, the movie, and it's like people are being like snapped away during band practice. So like zoomed out, and I'm very, very excited to read this one. The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. I really want to read this. I bought this when my friend and I went to New York and we went to the Morgan Stanley Library, which is beautiful. If you've never been there, it's a very old collection of books, but if you're a book lover and even like, you know, an architectural person, like my friend isn't super into books, but she's really into architecture, It's beautiful and worth taking a look at. So if you guys want to go there, I definitely recommend it. And I picked this up in the gift shop. Serpent and Dove. I know this is part of a series. I don't have the whole series. I just have this one. I remember I bought this around New Year's time. I believe this is a witch and a witch hunter, and they are now married. So marriage of convenience, which is kind of unexpected for a fantasy novel, which I kind of like. Supermarket. I know absolutely nothing about this book except it was given to me by my friend. This is one of his favorite books. It was given to me for my birthday of last year. I was very honored to receive it since he knows that I'm collecting 1,000 books. I always love to read like my best friend's like favorite books, and I actually did a whole video about like my best friend's 5-star reads, which I'll link up above if you want to see that one as well. The Good Girl Complex. Elle Kennedy. I really like Elle Kennedy. I read her, not all of it, but I did read some of the Deal series, like a off-campus series, and I did really like it. Cutesy, summery romance, and I'm really excited to get into this one since I know that I like her writing. Say You Swear, Megan Brandy. I've been meaning to read this for so long because I've heard such great things about this football romance. It's just a very dense book, but I like the way it feels. It's not like super floppy. There's a little give to it, but that's just like me being like a weirdo. Second Chance Summer, Morgan Matson. Again, this was for my summer romance reads last year. I tried reading this book, but it got a little heavy because the dad in this book is dying of cancer. I think the girl, like they're revisiting their old stomping grounds. It was just a little heavy for me last year, and so I decided to put it down for something a little bit cutesier, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to return. I really don't DNF books very often. Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book, I cannot believe that I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure I know a quote from it, and it is, "I am overwhelmed that you exist." And just for that quote alone, I want to read this book. I really wanted to read it at the beach. We never went to the beach, so I never read this book. But I did read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I quite like that one, so I feel like I'm gonna like this one as well. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Gormes. Believe it or not, it was actually my therapist who recommended this to me. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about me, then it should. I believe it was Brie Larson who's in the TV series of this, and I've heard such great things. I have heard some controversial things about the cover of this book, and actually when I went to London, I saw an alternative cover which I loved so much more, and actually now it's sold at Barnes & Noble's. This one is, I think, the antithesis of what the book is about. This book, I'm gonna be honest, I bought for aesthetic purposes, and I'm just obsessed with the way it looks. I think it's amazing, and the edges are gold. And the reason it's so big, the text is ginormous. Don't be fooled, like the text is huge. Kingdom of Backs by Marie Lu. You probably know her because she wrote Legend. I really like the premise of this because basically it's supposed to be about Mozart, but it's Mozart's sister. She is a very talented composer, but she's a woman in a very backwards time. Obviously, at the age that she was born, women weren't seen as anything other than currency to get married. Next, we have J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts, the original screenplay. This is just for aesthetic purposes, I'm gonna be honest. I bought this from the Harry Potter store in New York. If you haven't been, it is absolutely fantastic. Yes, it is a grab for money. It's just a merch store, but it is beautiful. Like the pictures alone that you could take there are just fantastic. It's very interactive. There's a lot of great things that like you could only really get at Universal Studios. So if you're far away from Orlando, go ahead and stop by in New York if that's closer for you. It's wonderful to go there, and I picked this up from there the last time I went. I will happily display this on my shelf next to my Harry Potter books, which I have read. I've read that entire series, and if you would like my review of that, I will link it down below. It's on my other channel. Next, I have The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. I have not read any of Holly Black's books. I have The Cruel Prince somewhere in there. I'm not really sure how The Cruel Prince and The Stolen Heir are related, gonna be honest, but I am really excited to get into it. I don't know if it's YA or new adult, but let me know what you thought of this series. Next, I have The Scarlet Veil. This is by Shelby Mehurin. I bought this from Barnes & Noble's when they were having their like hardback sale. I just wanted kind of a salacious vampire romance. I love vampire romances. It's probably because the first series that got me into reading was Vampire Academy. Next, I have Pride and Prejudice, and Pittsburgh by Rachel Lippincott. I have read Rachel Lippincott before. I do like her style of writing. I also got this during their hardcover sale. Another one I got was To Kill a Shadow from Catherine Quinn. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I do pick things off the shelf just because they are aesthetic. I don't care. It's part of my collection. I will go ahead and buy it. But also when I looked it up, because I do look up all of my books on Goodreads just to see what other people are thinking of the book, and there were really good reviews of it, and it just sounded right up my alley. A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I had such a big Jennifer L. Armentrout kick in high school. I read every series that she put out, and in college I kind of lost track there. But I really want to get back into her writing because I think that she does have such a good formula for romance. I did read her Blood and Ash series. I wonder if this is related at all. I'm not really sure if there's a connection between those two, but they kind of look like the same format. Imogene, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. This is supposed to be a LGBTQ romance book. This girl might have misled people to thinking that she wasn't straight, even though she is, or so she thought, because she's pretending to not be straight, or people think that she's not straight. She's wondering if she actually isn't. Sorry if that was so confusing. This book was given to me by my office. It is called Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. It's basically about how to change your behaviors into, this is just kind of like a fancy way to say how to manifest your dream life. I'm gonna be so for real. Next, I have The Shadows Between Us. This book was at a recommendation from my sister. She said that this was the book that got her into reading, and so I obviously had to pick it up. And I think I got this around Christmas or New Year's from the Barnes & Nobles in Times Square. I do remember that. And if you haven't been there, it's pretty cool. It's multiple levels, so I'm excited to read this. This one is a fantasy romance. Then I have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I've heard such good things about this memoir, and also just the title is very striking. I heard that she went through a lot at the behest of her mother. I do really want to know what her time was like, especially as someone who grew up watching iCarly. That was a very big show within my childhood. I have Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have never read Taylor Jenkins Reid, actually. I don't really like to think about her other books because they seem to be very morose, and I don't really want to traumatize myself. But Carrie Soto Is Back is a very popular one that I've heard a lot. I do tend to like sports romances a lot. This one I know is about a retired tennis athlete who had her record broken and wants to come back to reclaim the title, which is so girl boss of the century. I love that. I think that I'm just gonna be obsessed with this book if I ever get around to it. Pretty Reckless by LJ Shen. I actually started this book a bit ago, and then I picked up other things for YouTube along the way, and it just kind of got lost in the stacks. Basically, it's the most toxic romance between kind of enemies to lovers. I've got Babel by R.F. Kuang. I do remember I specifically got this from Peddler's Village in Pennsylvania. If you haven't been there, it's such a cutie town. If you are going to go or have the option to go, it is amazing in the fall/Halloween Christmas time. It is amazing. I always try to make a trip there during the holidays because it's just so cutesy around that time. This book is fantasy. It's basically set in olden times where cholera epidemic had just wiped out a lot of the population. This kid, he's working to preserve different languages, but he's wondering if maybe the government is corrupt and the institution that he has been working for is working for their best interests instead of the people. It's not really a romance. There's the suggestion of romance, which is probably why I haven't picked this up yet. I gotta be honest, I do love romantasy more than I love fantasy. Then I have Foul Lady Fortune by Chloe Gong, and this is the special edition with the red sprayed edges. I did read Our Violent Delights. I never finished the duology, but I heard such good things about Foul Lady Fortune, so when this was at Barnes & Nobles, especially since it's the special edition, I just wanted to pick it up. I think that once I get back into the series, I will really love it, and I think the setting is just so Shanghai 1931. It's about gangsters and mobs, but there is a fantasy supernatural element to it, which I do like. Then we have Jurassic Park and the Lost World by Michael Crean. This is actually book 1 and 2 bound together. If anyone knows me, they know that I am absolutely obsessed with Jurassic Park. If Jurassic Park were real, I would be the idiot that would go there together, even though there are like 15 billion movies about why it's a bad idea. And I'm so excited about the remake with Jonathan Bailey. Two things that I'm obsessed with together. Could not be more excited. My sister bought this for me for Christmas because I did have a copy of Jurassic Park, but it was a very tiny copy, and so she bought me the special edition from Barnes & Noble's. I have read book 1, Jurassic Park. I have not read the second one, The Lost World, so I'm putting this in my to-be-read pile because they are combined together. The 50 Shades of Grey series. I have actually never read these. I have watched the movies. I watched movie 1 and 2, and I didn't hate them. I know what the premise is, and I'm gonna be really honest with you guys, I did thrift these, so it was no skin off my nose if I like didn't love it. I think each of these copies was like $1. There was many of these at the thrift store, but I did buy them because I do plan to make a video reading and reviewing them. Since I have already watched the movies, I do know what happens, but that still doesn't mean that I don't want to read the books. Then I have A Court of Silver Flames. I cannot believe that I haven't read this, but I don't even own the rest of the ACOTAR series. I have book 1 of ACOTAR, but it is the old copy. Can you believe that I own this? That's crazy. I bought this when it first came out, 2015, and I didn't read it for 5 years. I had no idea what I owned. And I had this on my shelf, and then my sister found out about the series on TikTok and told me to read it. And she had the whole series in this version, and so I read hers, and then she got me this one. I'm now debating if I should buy a special edition or if I should buy the rest in this copy, because I know that book 5 is going to be coming out. Hopefully it's about Elaine and Az. That's just who I'm rooting for. But I have A Court of Silver Flames, and I haven't read it still. I think I'm just scared because of the sheer volume of it, and also I know that Nesta is going to be a complex character to chew. Just as an older sister, like, have to prepare myself for that because I feel like I'm going to relate to her a little bit too much. But before I do get into this, I do want to reread ACOTAR since it's been so long. I read all of those books in 2020 and I haven't picked them up since. Definitely want to buy those copies, reread them, and then go into A Court of Silver Flames so that I can really understand Nesta and Cassian and where they're coming from. I have the Shatter Me series. Now, I, in my youth, read what I thought was a trilogy of Shatter Me, and I was absolutely obsessed with Tahara Mafi's world. I love Aaron Warner so much. Like, one of my top book boyfriends, Aaron Warner. I love it. I also love enemies to lovers. Like, that's just my top tier, like, god tier trope. And so I was obsessed with the series. And then when I was in college, she released like all of these books, and I was like, oh my god, I had no time to read anything. So I kind of let it go. But since then, I actually bought the rest of the series. The Restore Me, which is the first and the second set, I did buy on day of release. My best friend and I read some of it in the store. So I remember like some, but not all. But that's why this is a hardcover, and then these are all paperback. I just ordered these on Amazon. I bought the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This series I bought in the giant Barnes & Noble's in Union in New York. And if you haven't been there, it is amazing. I went there around Christmas. I spent the morning by myself. It was amazing. I got Starbucks, got a hot chocolate, a croissant, read some books. Fantastic. I loved it. And that's where I ended up getting these. I've heard such good things about Shadow and Bone, and I really do want to read Le Bardugo. I've heard such good things about her, the Six of Crows series. I believe this is YA fantasy. Then we have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I really don't know much about this. This is the book that I started reading in Barnes & Noble's in the Union Square one. I believe this is like quintessential 2020 book talk, my sister describes it as. I've got This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. Again, I'm just obsessed with her writing. I think it is so good, and so I had to buy the first of This Woven Kingdom. I do believe that I will be as obsessed with this as I was with Shatter Me. Pucking Around, Emily Rath. I believe this is a reverse harem, gotta be honest, and a hockey romance. Believe it or not, my brother got me this, I believe at the behest of my sister. I just love any sort of sports romance. You would not catch me dead watching a hockey game. Like, I could not care less. But when you put like a sports romance together, there's just something about it that just like does it for me. Then we have The Final Offer by Lauren Asher. I really need to read this. I always love Lauren Asher's books. I actually read Love Unwritten really recently. I gave that book, I think, 4.5 stars. I loved it. Then we have Sorcery of Thorns. I again got this one from Union Square. This I got because their YA fantasy section was so extensive, and it's the same reason I got We Hunt the Flames. I believe these are both YA fantasy romances. So if you guys have read these and I should bump these up on my TBR, please let me know. Next up is the entire Throne of Glass series. I have just convinced my book club to read this series with me. I bought this entire hardcover set because I just knew there are rarely any series that I buy in totality, let alone if there are 8 of them. But just because I love Sarah J Maas so much and I've heard so many people with similar tastes love this series, I went out on a limb and bought the whole thing on Amazon. I had so many gift cards that I paid $11 for this set of 8, which I'm very proud of. My current read is The Assassin's Blade. I am about a third of the way through it. Subscribe so that way you can hear what my thoughts are about Throne of Glass. I'm gonna do a whole video dedicated to it. Next up, I have The Serpent, The Wings of Night. I was so excited when I saw this in a bookstore, and I think that this fantasy is something that a lot of people who love ACOTAR really love. Then we have Throne of the Fallen. I'm gonna be honest, I bought this book because at the time I was looking for a really good standalone. I was a little bit sick of series and I wanted something that was just a one or done, really cute fantasy. And I've heard such good things about this. And then when I looked back on Goodreads, it's no longer a standalone. I think it did too well, and the author was like, no, we're just gonna make this a series now. Like I said before, I read Our Violent Delights and I hadn't read Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. Gonna be honest, the main characters, while they are great, what's doing it for me is the side couple. So sorry, but the side couple I think carry in this book. Next we have Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I really don't need to know any more about this book other than it was written by J.L. Armentrout. And the cover, beautiful. Look at that blue. Next I have The Celebrants by Stephen Rowley. Again, this was a book that my aunt gave me because she read it as part of her book club. Basically, this group of college kids kept seeing each other yearly just to check in and see how everyone was doing. They would meet up every summer to do like activities together or go away together. And one year there just seems to be a lot of secrets going on between the members of the group. And so it's about those secrets unfolding. Next I have Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I just read Powerless, and while it wasn't as amazing as everyone was making it seem to be, it was very enjoyable. So when I was down in Virginia dropping my sister off to school, I went to a Books A Million there and I picked up Reckless. Then we have Heartless Hunter and A Funny Story. I recently went to Canada and I went inside the CF Eaton Center and I bought these 2 books and I was so excited. I feel like Indigo, which is the store I went to, was just so modern and very clean, very put together. I loved it. So I picked up Heartless Hunter, which is like a witch/witch hunter romance. And then I picked up A Funny Story by Emily Henry, which I've heard such good things about. Then we have Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welsh. This book is the second to Love and Gelato. I love the aesthetic of these books. I think they're just so cutesy and very summery. I absolutely adored Love and Gelato, and that was a book that I reviewed in my summer reads video, and I just had to get book 2 because I was so obsessed with book 1. I believe that this one is a different character and it is set in Ireland, unlike the first one, which was in Italy. Then we have Legendborn by Tracy Dion. Just by reading the summary, this is the most convoluted plot I've ever heard. There's like demons, Arthur's knights. There's just like a lot going on in this, but that doesn't make me any less excited because I feel like a lot of people do love this series, and I believe that there are a couple books out at this point. Then I have Zodiac Academy. I just had the first one because my sister tried to read this and actually hated it. Sorry to put my sister on blast, but I kept this book. I honestly wasn't that excited to read it at all, and I was considering donating it until I saw a bunch of TikToks of people reading the series. It's way more different than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was just gonna be like a YA romance or something like that. I'm pretty sure that it's like heavy graphic romance, which is like right up my alley. So we're keeping this one, and I'm probably gonna read the rest of the series. Next I have this honk of a book, which is Victoria the Queen. I bought this in college because we had to write a paper based on a book of a historical figure. I was supposed to have read this book. I did not. And so it's just in my collection. I am interested to read about it. It's just not heavy on my TBR, as you could probably tell. Then I have this even bigger book, which is The Priory of the Orange Tree. This book is so intimidating to me. Like, it's just massive, but the text is large. Excuse the shifted lighting, folks. I had a dentist appointment and my camera died at the same time, so we are back. On to the next stack. Next thing I have is Empire of the Vampire. This I got from Waterstones in London. I went to London for the first time this year, and if you want to see that vlog, go ahead and subscribe to my other channel. That's where it will be posted soon. I ended up getting this from my first bookstore trip in London, so this will always be very special to me. And as I said before, I just love a good vampire romance. So pretty. And this one has a pretty dark premise because they haven't seen the sun in like years because vampires have taken over. Next, I have Everyone in This Room Will Be Dead Someday. I might save this for a very special occasion where I feel a little more mentally prepared to read something like this. I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I've heard such good things about this book. I've heard that it's like about a magical island. I think it's LGBTQ if I'm not mistaken. Next I have The Once and Future Witches. This is one of those books with like the frayed edges. I'm gonna be honest, I don't love that texture. I'm not really obsessed with it, but I still am excited to read this book. I feel like I am somebody who loves like the quintessential fantasy elements, like witches, vampires, things like that. Ruin and Rule by Pepper Winters. This was something I picked out and I've had for so many years. The cover, as you can see, is before the iteration of cutesy covers and redos. This was more so when naked men would kind of feature on romance books and embarrass all of us. Pepper Winters was somebody who was really big when I was in high school. She wrote more darker romances, so unlike anything else I have, but I do have Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. I read this book, I pick it up probably from time to time when I want to feel a little bit more educated with my reading. A history book from the perspective of minority groups. So how did these tales in history feel from the perspective of the people who were oppressed rather than the people who wrote the history books? I had read a couple chapters a bit ago. I underlined some stuff and you can see I still have like a bookmark in here, so that's how far I had made it. Next we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I am somebody who doesn't love the frayed edges like I said, but I did start this book a bit ago and I put it down because I was reading other things for YouTube. You can see I have a little charm in here. Not saying that I didn't love it, it was just in a part in a book where it was a little boring. Next I have Emily McIntyre's Wretched, which is part of the Never After series. The woman is the bad guy and the guy is an undercover agent. This series is pretty dark. I'm gonna say that the first book was very entertaining, which was Hooked. It was a Peter Pan retelling. The second book, Scarred, was incredibly disappointing to me. I rated it 2 stars. Like I always say, he can lie, he can kill, extort, whatever he wants to do, but if he cheats or hurts women or children, I am out of there. Next I have You with the View. This has something that a lot of people are iffy on, which is that it references social media. Like it actually talks about TikTok. The girl in this book, she finds some pictures of her grandmother with a very hunky guy from back in the day, and she posts it to TikTok and says, "I'd love to find this guy," and she gets in touch with his grandson and they go on a trip together and they found each other through TikTok. Next I have The Heretic's Wife. This one is not super popular. I picked this up at a thrift store, but based on the premise, I just really do like it. It's about booksellers, so I think that just made me inclined to read it. It's a brother and sister who sell forbidden translations of the Bible. Next is a most recent purchase, which is Haunting Adeline. I have been putting this off for a very long time, okay, because it's just so infamous. Like a lot of people talk about how this is like the peak of dark romance. My friend is actually reading it right now, person in my book club. She just finished book 1 and she's reading book 2 right now. Dark romance isn't really my cup of tea. It's really not. But because Haunting and Hunting Adeline are so well known, I have to do a video about it. Then I have XOXO by Axio. I bought this in an airport in Korea. It was the only time I'd ever been to Korea. It was a layover between the Philippines and America, and they had a bookstore, and I thought to myself, when is the next time you're gonna buy a book in Korea? Probably never. It's basically a romance between a pop star, like a K-drama star, and a girl who is super into music. And so I really like those, like giving like Taylor Swift superstar vibes, like that kind of thing. It's very cutesy. Next we have Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This book I'm expecting for me to give 5 stars. I've heard such good things about this. Every person who I see reads this on Goodreads just gives it an automatic 5 stars. So if it doesn't, it's gonna be severely disappointing. But I heard it's just a very cutesy like YA romance with some girl who thinks that she wants a certain guy, but her neighbor is pissing her off all the time, and her and the neighbor are obviously gonna end up together. So that's Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Then we have Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. I am obsessed with any sort of anonymous writing, whether that be letters, texting, emails, social media. The two main characters write to each other unknowingly. Oh, I eat that trope all the time. Juliet is basically grieving her mother's death and writes her letters on her grave, and Declan finds the letters and writes back to her. A YouTuber who I love, Sunny Kim, she recommended this, and I trust her recommendations with my life. Then we have Just for the Summer. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was part of a series, and I didn't read the first 2 books of this series. Is it that detrimental if I read this without reading those? Like, is it bad? Because like I've heard such good things about this, and I don't have the other 2 books in the series, and I would love to just dive into this for real. Even the premise is very cool. It's like every person that these people date, every single person that they date, when they break up with them, they meet their true love directly after them. And so they post about it on Reddit, and they find each other, and they decide to date one another in hopes that it'll cancel out their bad luck. Then we have Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I also got this in London. I got this in a different Waterstones. I had to pick this up because I'm absolutely obsessed with anything Ali Hazelwood writes. Pretty sure I own all the books that she's written. The setting is always on point. Every single setting she creates, every world that she introduces us to is so detailed and so well thought out and so niche. It's just so convincing. And then to add an amazing romance on top of that is just, I think, pure talent. I absolutely love her books. Next we have When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I actually read the back of this book a few days ago, and I was reminded of how much I really want to read this because it just seems really cutesy. It's about this pop star who wants a little bit break from the fame, and her car breaks down, and this guy who's a baker decides to offer her his guest room even though he really doesn't like her, and he's very grumpy, and he just kind of wants to be left alone in his town where everybody's nosy and everybody's in his business, but he starts to get along with her. I just think it'll be a really cute grumpy sunshine with like baking in the background, so I would be so remiss if I didn't read this really soon. Next I have In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. I'm obsessed with Fourth Wing, if you guys haven't heard. I love Rebecca Yarros so much, and I just think that her writing is amazing in fantasy. And I haven't really ventured too much into her just plain romance writing. In the Likely Event is about 2 people who were in a plane crash together, and over the years have crossed paths but haven't really kept in touch. And then all of a sudden the guy is tasked with protecting her life in Afghanistan. We have Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I will say that I definitely bought this because I thought it would give me the same vibes as Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's the same kind of premise. 2 very prominent figures thrust into a relationship that they really didn't want to be in. But my sister read this book because I've had it for a while, and she did not love it. My sister and I read a lot of the same books. We honestly have the same opinions on most books. I'm a little scared that she didn't really like this. Next, I have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. This I received from my sister as a Christmas gift. This came out as a series on Netflix, but I do want to read the books before I venture into that series. What I really want is to read this, all of it, and then get into that and compare how they're similar or different. My friend Jackie read this. She's part of my book club. She read these. She thought they were pretty entertaining, so I have high hopes for this series. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I got a Barnes & Noble's exclusive edition. I just think it's beautiful. I believe this is dark academia. Basically, these group of friends face a tragedy, and one of them gets wrongfully convicted, or so he claims, and the detective wants to know 10 years later what actually happened that night. Then we have Unfortunately Yours and Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I will say that I got so obsessed with Tessa Bailey because I read It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker last year during the summertime and was absolutely obsessed, and so I really wanted to get into other series of hers. Then we have A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Schwab. This is the first in a series. I believe it's a trilogy. I have not read any V.E. Schwab, but basically there are different parallel timelines. So there's like red, gray, white, and Once Upon a Time black. And there's a guy who was raised in red London, goes back and forth between the different Londons. Then we have Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas. I screamed upon finding this at Barnes & Noble's because I didn't know it was coming out. And I was obsessed with the other book that is related to this, which is Tristix's Venom. If you haven't read that book, please do. Be warned, it is a bully romance, okay? It is a bully romance between two girls at this high school. They're on the lacrosse team and they absolutely are vicious with each other, but their romance is so good. I gave that book 5 stars. So I have high hopes for this book. I'm not really sure if this is like a reverse harem situation. No. Then we have Assistant to the Villain. I like this book a lot. The cover really just does it for me. I also like the premise of a well-known villain trying to hire somebody to be his assistant. I started this book a little bit before I had to go on to other things for a YouTube video, but I am really excited to pick it up again, especially since there is another book out. Next I have The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. This is a book that I started a bit ago. I made it 100 pages in. I got so scared that I stopped reading it. Accidentally read the reviews on Goodreads and everybody in the comments was like, what the fuck was that? Let me just tell you, like, there's nothing about this book that's cutesy, okay? Her parents dead. The main character's best friend dies in combat. She has 2 kids. One of the twins, terminal cancer. This guy who's writing the letters to her stops, goes to see her, doesn't tell her that it's him, and he witnesses like how hard her life is and stuff. Like, I'm really scared to pick this up again. Then we have King of Greed and King of Pride. I read King of Wrath, and listen, I love Anna Huang. I really like the Twisted series. I think she does a good job of building up romance and friendship. King of Wrath was fine. It just wasn't the greatest, but I do love the premise of a series based on the 7 deadly sins. Next we have The Song of Achilles. I am just saving this for a rainy day when I think I want to cry my eyes out. Knowing what I know about this book, because I do know that it ends in a tragedy. Next I have Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I've had this for so long. I believe I started reading this at some point and just didn't finish it, but I have heard a lot of quotes from Book Talk primarily about balls. So I'm not that eager to pick it up, but I do have it. Next, I have The Witch's Heart. This was a gift given to me by my sister. This is primarily about Norse mythology. So we have Odin, we have Loki, witches. I really think that I'm gonna like this one, and the main character is a witch. She's burned at the stake by Odin because she refuses to tell him the future. And so she runs away to an island where she falls in love with Loki. And her and Loki have 3 children that they're trying to hide from Odin so that they will not get punished. Next, I have The Inheritance Games. This is a series I've been meaning to read for so long. And in fact, I put it on my book club's radar because I think we would really like it. It's giving me like Knives Out vibes. I'm obsessed with that movie. I probably can quote that movie front to back. I really, really love it so much. And the fact that it's the same premise, all of a sudden she's given this inheritance from this random guy, even though he has living relatives. Next, I have the book Matilda by Roald Dahl. I was obsessed with Matilda when I was really young, and just for nostalgia purposes, I still have this book. Next, I have the first 3 books in the Disney Villain series. One of my friends from my book club, Nick, he recommended this series. We're obsessed with Disney. We're like Disney adults. Every iteration is about a Disney villain, like from their perspective. Fairest of all, I have the evil queen, I have Beast from Beauty and the Beast, and then I have Ursula, so Poor Unfortunate Souls. Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. The main character, Gadriel, part of the LGBTQ, his family has a hard time accepting his gender. To prove himself, he goes to a cemetery to perform a ritual to summon his dead cousin's ghost, but he accidentally summons a different ghost from his school. The ghost that sticks around and starts hanging around with him is trying to tie up some loose ends, and the more they get to know each other, the more that they don't want to be separated. I think it's a very cool premise, and honestly I'm wondering like what's gonna happen because he's dead, I'm assuming. Next, I have The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. Absolutely stunning cover. I do like the premise. It kind of reminds me of Moana, if I'm being honest. Basically, the god of sea used to protect her people, but since then has cursed them every single year. In an attempt to get back in his favor, they sacrifice a woman every year. But one year, it's, I believe, somebody who's close to her, and so she sacrifices herself instead. She ends up descending into the spirit realm and realizing that this god of sea is asleep, and so she's trying to wake him up so that way they can have luck restored to her people. Next, I have Wildfire by Hannah Grace. So I did read Icebreaker, and honestly, I was very underwhelmed with that book. I gave the book like 3 stars. It's fine, but like it wasn't anything groundbreaking. I'm hoping this one will be a little bit better. I think that this is interesting because it's not necessarily set on the campus, although it is 2 characters who were from campus. This is more summer camp vibes. They had like a one-night stand and then accidentally realized that they are camp counselors together. I actually got the notification because I forgot I pre-ordered it. Daydream number 3 in the series is coming my way as well. Next, I have this very pretty version of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. It's a Barnes & Noble's classic with the gold edges. I just loved the look of this, and Tess of the D'Urbervilles is something that I really do want to read. It's just a classic. Same goes for this, which is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I got this more modernized version at Barnes & Noble's during their hardcover sale. I don't know when I'm going to be pulling this out, but I do like the fact that I have a couple of classics under my belt. This book is also something that I don't normally have this type on my shelf. It's called Don't Text Your Ex Happy Birthday and Other Advice on Love, Sex, and Dating by Nick Viall. So Nick Viall was a contestant on The Bachelor. He has a very famous podcast. My friend got this for me because we have recently gotten into The Bachelorette and Bachelor World. She's been watching it for a long time, but I haven't, and so we've just been watching it together. And so this is a book about, you know, dating advice, different situations, things like that she had gotten me for my birthday, but I promise I am not texting my ex happy birthday. Next, I have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I always love very cutesy, like Halloween-y books, and I feel like this is a perfect book to pull out in the fall time. I'm always looking for autumn, like autumnal books like that. Next, we have Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. I've been meaning to read this for a long time. I feel like this is just going to be such a good enemies to lovers romance. Even the tagline says they're a match made in hell. I believe strawberries on the cover are because she eats strawberries and he's allergic because she knows that they're gonna kiss on their wedding day. She tries to kill him. Next, I have In a Jam by Katie Canterbury. I have been wanting to read this for so long. I have heard such great things about this book, especially from Steph Bohr, who is a booktuber that I follow religiously. I think that it's gonna be very cutesy, small town romance. Next, I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book I got from Beacon Hills bookstore in Boston. If you haven't been there, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It is possibly the cutest bookstore I've ever been to. The whole place is blue. Their mascot is a squirrel. It is such a cute place, and I will link the vlog where I went there up above. It's so adorable. This book is something that I've been meaning to read for a very long time. The cover is gorgeous. It's by V.E. Schwab. Like I said, I haven't read anything by her yet. She's able to live forever, but nobody will ever remember her, which I think is just so tragic, but a very cool concept until she meets someone who does remember her. I really need to get this one under my belt. Next, I have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I read Ashley Poston's book The Dead Romantics a while ago. I thought it was cute. It was very autumnal, very cozy, but it wasn't anything revolutionary. But I've heard that The 7-Year Slip is a fan favorite of a lot of people. I've heard that it's like a 5-star excellent read. I'm very excited to get into this book. I feel like this is like a really good fall-time vibe book, so I am excited for this one. Next, I have Just Haven't Met You Yet by Sophie Cousins. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember much about this. This was a Christmas gift, I believe, other than the fact that I know it's like they accidentally switch suitcases. So she's trying to find the rightful owner, considering she rifled through all his stuff, which I think is so intrusive and why you need to buy locks for your suitcases. Next, we have the ultimate sales machine. This was given to me by my work, basically just about selling, which like used to be my old job, but it's not anymore. So I don't know if I'm ever gonna read this, but I do own it as part of my collection. Next, I have Rush by Maya Banks. Best friend's little sister. It is forbidden romance and it is an age gap. It's 14 years apart. They've been into each other for a very long time, but they didn't want to act on it, obviously because of the age gap and then also because of the tie to her brother. Next, we have Lucy Score's Things We Never Got Over. I have been meaning to read this for so long. I swear every time I pick up a different book, this book is staring at me in the face, like waiting for me to pick it up. Oh my god, this is book 100 in my collection. Please motivate me, like share like a quote or something that will make me read this book. Next, we have The Help by Catherine Stockett. I remember turning on the TV and catching the last 10 minutes of this movie late at night when I was in high school, and I was crying because of the end of it. And if the ending is gonna make me cry, imagine how bad it's gonna make me cry when I actually read the whole thing and understand what's happening. Next, we have The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken and The Hadley Academy by Connor Grennan. These two books I had thrifted from the thrift store, and I really was just in a fantasy kick at the time, and I think both of these just satisfied that cravings. Next, we have You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thau. I think this book is absolutely gonna break my heart. Besides the fact that the cover is just beautiful, Julie's boyfriend Sam had died and she really wants to move on with her life, try to escape the memories of her boyfriend, but she calls his phone and he actually picks up. Next, we have Neon Gods by Katie Robert. This is about Persephone and Zeus. So I am really excited to get into this. I've also heard this is incredibly spicy, which I'm excited for. Next, you guys are gonna kill me for the fact that I haven't read this. Oh my god. I have not read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I just think, like, listen, as a bi girly myself, I think that this will absolutely destroy my heart. Like, I think that this will wreck me. I'm not ready for it, and I've heard such good things about this. Next, we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a classic that I thrifted for like $2. I really want to read Dracula, especially in the fall winter time. I think that it will just be a really good classic for me to read. Obviously, like I said, I'm obsessed with vampires, so this one will just be a fun one to hear where the myth started. Next, we have I Don't Know What I Want, But I Know It's Not This, a step-by-step guide to finding gratifying work by Julie Jansen. I am somebody who always struggles with career and work and different things involving, you know, like career paths and things like that. I bought this at a time when I was especially lost. The next, I have The Lucky List by Rachel Lippincott. Like I said, I have read Rachel Lippincott before. I do like her writing. This is an LGBTQ romance about a girl who lost her mom to cancer. She goes through her mom's stuff and her dad invites his best friend's daughter to help her. They find a list of her mom's like lucky list in the bottom of her closet, so they decide to do some of the things that her mom wanted to do when she was a senior in high school. Of course, I have another Sarah J. Maas book in my to be read pile, and that is Crescent City. I have House of Earth and Blood. I definitely want to read this. I have heard such good things about this series, and also the fact that ACOTAR crosses into this series. I'm not even giving you a spoiler warning, okay? It's been like months and Sarah J. Maas posted on her story, so like whatever. This series, I just know I'm gonna be obsessed with it too. I also heard that it's inspired by Zootopia, and I love Zootopia, so I have no doubt that I'm going to be devouring this book. Then we have Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I have heard that this is like an excellent slow burn romance. I think it's duology. This was on the chopping block for one of the like books we were gonna read as part of our book club. We ended up reading Caraval instead, so I put this to the wayside. This is the last of my to be read physical TBR. So guys, that is it. That is the end of all the books on my physical TBR. I know that it's absolutely crazy. It's way too many books for one person, but surprisingly, I only have 236 books in my possession. My goal is always to tip the scales to have more books that I have read than I have not read. Please let me know if there are any books that that you want me specifically to read. Like, share a quote or a trope or, you know, some aspect of a book that you think will convince me to read it. Obviously, I am in the middle of the Throne of Glass series, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm reading that with my book club. It for sure will be done. But if there's anything else that you're like, you absolutely have to read this after you finish that, please let me know. Like, the things that tip the scale in a book's favor is like, I see a fan art on TikTok, or I see a quote on Instagram. You know what I'm saying? Like, other people share like something really cute and juicy about it, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to read it, you know? So please let me know if there's anything here that you absolutely think it's crazy I haven't read, and please let me know if there's anything you would recommend I add to this pile. I love you guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Look at her style from the street. Look at her style from the ghetto. This I will never make it big.